Okay, so I'm going to take this old compensator that I've got on this gun. It's a Brazos comp, and we're going to go through the process of taking it off and installing a new comp, which is this one. It's a titanium compensator, port size, designed with CFD analysis software, so it's awesome. And it'll end up the similar setup that I have on this other gun, which I really like. So two 3/16" holes, titanium compensator, points super fast, and shoots super flat. So we're gonna make the upgrade, put this on this. So the first step is to get this comp off. So we'll go ahead and mount this up in the vise, heat it up, and pull the comp off. Okay, so I've got some aluminum soft jaws on my vise. We're going to clamp it on the lug here. Okay, we're going to heat it up with a heat gun, get it nice and hot, and then we're going to use a crescent wrench to pull this off. And one of the things I've noticed doing a bunch of comps is that there's a point where when you get it hot enough, it won't put up much resistance, but until then, you'll really feel the comp still stuck on there. So make sure you keep putting heat on it until it gets hot enough, and it takes a while. You could also do this with a torch, but this is easy to do in a garage with a heat gun. It just takes a lot of heat. So I'm still not ready to go yet. We'll twist it a little bit. We'll get it a little hotter. Okay, let's give this a try. Hold it down with this glove. Still pretty snug, but we're making progress. So when you're doing this, if you really feel the barrel twisting, and it feels like, you know, you're really twisting against the lug, you need to get it hotter. Okay. There we go, it's off. So you can see the Loctite still in there. That's cleaned off. So now we're ready to clean that up. Okay, so the barrel's cooled down now, but we've got a bunch of retaining compound gunk on here. So we're going to clean this off with alcohol as best we can. we've got this big divot here, right there. I'm going to chip that out. So as you get ready to do the final bonding of the comp, it's super important that you have the barrel threads clean. So even after test fitting and stuff, the final sort of bond, you'll want to go back and clean with alcohol, blow the threads dry with a compressor before you get ready to go. And when we get to that part, the retaining compound, it sets up pretty fast. So you'll be threading, and you need to kind of practice so you can get it right to where you want it to be and stop. Because if you stop for a while and then try to make an adjustment, the retaining compound will kick and it'll be set, and you'll have to heat it up and start over. That sucks. So that looks pretty good. I'm gonna use a wire brush and then come back. Okay, here's a wire brush. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. So now let's do a test fit of the comp. Okay, so we've got the barrel cleaned up and going to to start threading the comp on. We've come across a pretty typical situation where the comp is feeling a little tight to thread on. So you can see here's our 685 by 40 tap. And test fit here. So the tap's running smoothly on the comp. And this is the tap from Barrell's. But the fit of the comp on the barrel is still tight. And so what we're going to do, for one thing, there's probably a little bit of that adhesive still at the bottom of the threads. So we're going to clean it up with this die, which is the same thing. It's a 11/16 by 40 die. I'm going to mount this in the vise so I can do it a little smoother. Hold on. Okay, so we're going to thread this on. Okay. So we're going to run this just by hand to start off with. Let's check this. And that was drawing a chip. Okay, I'm going to mount the wrench on here. Okay, so I pulled that off to get it mounted in the wrench. It was a little easier that way. So this is an adjustable die, and you can set tension with this set screw back here. So I've got it loose all the way, and we're just going to run it along the threads and chase it. So you can see it's drawing this tiny chip here. And that's because most of the barrel manufacturers leave extra material on the threads so that you can get a nice tight fit from the comp. Now this barrel, because it's already had a comp on it, this same process was gone through the first time the comp was mounted on it. We had to chase the threads a little bit. So now, comp threads on. It's getting a little bit tighter. Yeah, it's getting tighter as we go, so I may run it just a little bit more. I'm going to look at these threads right at the end and see. So this is pretty typical of fitting a comp. So on my comps, I thread mill the internal threads on the comp on the CNC. And I verify with the Brownell's tap that it's running smooth. And then depending on the barrel manufacturer and honestly the run of barrels, you may find that it's going to be just a perfect snug fit, or it may be a little snug and you're going to need to chase it with this collapsible die. So I'm going to run this again. I need to go a little further. That looks good. So KKM barrels do a nice job of putting this relief at the end of the threads. Schumann barrels don't have it. It's a little bit more problematic. You need to relieve the inside of the comp threads a little bit more oftentimes. That should do it. Okay, so that looks good. No play, it's perfect fit. So now let's check it in the slide. That brings us to sort of the next steps on installing a comp. So now we've got to time the comp. Okay, so this won't thread any further. It's kind of stopping right there. So we'll take a look and see what we need to remove to get it to thread on more. You can see inside we've still got some threaded section left, but it's not going all the way on yet. Okay, so what that was is the tap on sort of the starting side, it's got these big, or the die, it's got these big chamfered lead-ins, so we weren't able to thread all the way to the end. So now I've got the barrel threaded into the back side of the die. Get centered here and focus. So now we'll be able to get right up to the edge here. So I'm just threading by hand. You can see it drawing a chip. I need to put it back in the vise here. Yep. That looks good. So we just hadn't threaded all the way. Okay. So you can see there's a pretty good sized gap there still. So let's go one more turn. So we're gonna get lucky on this because the gap that's there is pretty much exactly what we want. And this clocked, so that it just happened to do that. So oftentimes when you get the comp threaded all the way on, you'll find that it's going to make contact with the slide while it's still clocked and it's not quite there. And to properly fit the comp, what you're going to end up doing is chucking the comp up in a lathe and facing off some material off the back so that it fits just perfect. Or you can do it with a file. Oftentimes filing titanium kind of sucks, so it's easier to do it on the lathe. So this just happened to be kind of like a perfect fit. And I'll check it with a feeler gauge here in a second, and we'll confirm that. Okay, so I got the slide kind of lined up, the comp on the slide. Now this gun, the fit of the barrel to the slide isn't perfect when it's just in the slide, and that's because I found out that the slot in my para frame when I first built this gun isn't exactly on the center line. And so I found out that after I'd fit my hood perfectly to the slide, when I went and put it in the frame, the slot in the frame was slightly off center, and so it was over constraining the barrel. It just wasn't a good fit, and so I ended up having to loosen the fit of the hood to the slide so that when it's complete in the system, so with respect to the slide and the lower section of the lugs and the slot in the frame, that's what tightened it all up. So in order to make sure that the barrel is sort of in its resting position and the comp gets clocked to the slide correctly, in this gun I have to have it installed in the frame. So that's something to be aware of when you're setting your sort of final clocked position in your gun. You need to know whether or not it's important that the barrel and the slide are in the frame. So for this, it looks like I've got my feeler gauges here, and this is a 5 thou feeler gauge, and it's a little too big, so I'm going to check the others, but it looks like I've got a little bit of contact on the bottom here, and that first comp ended up getting fit to the slide by taking some material off the bottom edge of the comp, and this comp is perfectly square. So we may need to go back and relieve either a little bit off the bottom of the comp or a little bit off the slide. So we're not quite done yet. Okay, so I've got the 3/1000 feeler gauge out, and it fits in across the top here, but as we slide around the bottom with the barrel locked up, it doesn't want to go in, so we're going to have to relieve a little off the bottom of the comp. Okay. So normally I just go over to the CNC and I've got a program that cuts a 1 degree angle in the front of the face of the slide, and I don't think this slide's ever had that done. But this is a pretty simple process, so all we really need to do is just take a little bit off the lower section of the slide. So up top we were able to get that 3/1000 thick shim in there, and it started to have contact kind of right around this section down here. So realistically we only need to relieve the slide and in some of these lower areas here. So I'm going to go ahead and use a file. Lower the camera here. Square the file up on the front of the face of the slide. Give it our calibrated 1 degree. So I've made some progress here, but the 3 thou shim still doesn't slide in across the bottom here. So I'm going to file a little bit more. Okay, so we're pretty close now. 3 thou shim fits across the top. Fits across the bottom also. I've got, as you roll around the side here, it gets tight right there. So we've got a little to remove from the sides and we should be good. And you can feather that in with a file. Still tight there. Still tight there. So we'll give it one more pass. Okay, so I've got this slide all relieved and the 3/1000 gauge fits around no problem. So another thing to touch on is the position of the end of the barrel with respect to this front baffle. So that Brazos comp that I had installed on here before, it actually stuck past the first port based on this dimension. So the Brazos comp in this dimension right here was smaller and the barrel stuck out. And so I had to remove on the lathe some material from the front of the barrel to get it to fit in there. So you can see now we're just about perfect on this one, if a little shy. So that's another element when you're fitting a comp to a barrel that you have to take into account. You may need to remove a little bit from the front of the barrel to get that thing in there perfectly. So now we're ready to apply the adhesive to the threads and get the comp stuck in place. Okay, so we're ready to go here. Here's the adhesive we use, which is Loctite 603. It's retaining compound as opposed to thread locker. So at net fit, which is basically what the threads are, this will do a better job. So I'm going to stick it on, thread. We're not going to stop. We're going to go right till we get it to size, clocked, and hope everything's perfect. So here we go. Okay, that looks good. Okay, so now that it's clocked, you can see we've got some excess retaining compound sort of on the barrel there. So we'll want to wipe that off and clean it with alcohol and then let the barrel sit. Okay, so this is the final step, and that's to align ream. So, got EGW ream there on my drill. So with titanium, it work hardened, so you want to make sure you're pushing and drawing a chip. Okay, so we made it through the first port there. You can see some nice chips. Now we'll go on to the second one. Okay, so we're almost through the second port. It's good to put a little oil back here, because this basically turns into a working bearing as you're reaming. Okay, so that's through the second chamber. So I'm going to go ahead and back it out and clear out some chips and then pop through the last one. Okay, so we're going to do the final chamber. Going to come a little oil there, some there. There we go. It's all the way through. So that's all three align reamed. Some chips in there, we'll go clear those out and this thing's done.